This lecture is about postmodernism, part 2. In our postmodernism lecture, part 1, we have discussed about about some trends of postmodernism, but in this lecture we will discuss some critics, postmodern critics. In our lecture on post-structuralism and deconstruction, we have discussed Derrida, Michel Foucault, so we are not going to discuss them, but they are also modernists, postmodernists. Here we will discuss mainly three critics: Jean-Francois Lyotard, Jean Baudrillard, and Frederick Jameson. Jean-Francois Lyotard's book Postmodern Condition was published in French in 1979, and it was translated into English and published in 1984. Lyotard introduced the term postmodernism into the academia. Some main features of Lyotard's criticism are that in the postmodernism, meta-narratives collapse. Meta-narratives such as Marxism, liberalism, Christianity, religion, etc. Collapse. They have now become obsolete, so they are rejected as meta-narratives. These meta-narratives operated through exclusion and inclusion. They acted as a harmonizing force. They pushed the heterogeneity to other domains. There is no heterogeneity. They believed in a kind of harmonizing force, a certain kind of ideology, certain kind of views. They silenced other voices and other discourses in the name of universal principles and general goals. Postmodernism witnesses plurality. It voices, it raises the voice of marginalized. Marginal voices are raised, voices from the margins are there. The second thing is they focus on science and education. Now the science and education are judged by their utility, their performance, their performativity. Lyotard's focus is on scientific discourses. Science assumes the role of a meta-narrative. Science validates other meta-narratives in his views, but science as a meta-narrative waned after the Second World War. The focus of finding truth shifted to the performativity or the usefulness. There was a shift from ideals to the skills. The people learned skills to use them in their lives. So because they were useful, so usefulness was given importance. the real question shifted from is it true to is it C-level education was now judged by performativity, by its usefulness. If it is not useful, of what value it will be to the person who gets educated. If the person is educated, if he doesn't use it for his livelihood, of what importance it will be. So its usefulness, its performativity was in the focus. Pedagogy will now use knowledge as cultural and economic capital. The third point Lyotard puts forth in his book is anything goes culture. Money is the only sign of value. Postmodernism is now a new modernism. Anything goes culture, pop culture is there. It should be, only thing is that it should be tasteful. That if it is not tasteful, it is rejected, it is not given importance. Money is the only sign of value. Postmodernism is not an end in high postmodernism doesn't end the high culture of modernism, but it's a break to a new modernism. Stephen Corner's criticism of postmodernism is that it's postmodernism is a disguised allegory of the condition of academic knowledge and institutions. It's a kind of negative heroism of the intellectuals. Intellectuals were losing authority in the 60s due to the critique against the academy. So these are the points raised by Franco's Lyotard. Now we come to Jean Baudrillard. Baudrillard published his book for a critique of the political economy of science. Baudrillard calls postmodern culture the culture of simulacrum, a culture of simulacrum. It's a shift from the production of things to the production of information. No production and economic production and culture are not separate now. They are not separate realms. The economic production is not separate from the realm of ideology, culture, cultural artifacts, images, even feelings are part of economic life, economics of society. Society passes from the from a stage of metallurgic into a semiurgic society. These are his words, Baudrillard's words, a metallurgic into a semiurgic society. Semiurgic society. So, mode of production, not simply culture of sign, but of simulacrum. Simulacrum is identical copy with no original. In Benjamin's view, the aura of a work of art is destroyed by mechanical production. Baudrillard thinks that the distinction between original and copy has collapsed. Now CDs and films, etc., are available, and you don't need the original. There is no necessity of the original. You need not buy the original. The copies are there, CDs are there, films are there in the copies. So the copy is as good as the original. So this is one point of Baudrillard, that postmodernism is the culture of simulacrum. Second point, Jean Baudrillard puts forth is that postmodernism is a culture of hyperrealism, a model of the real without origins or reality is hyperreal. There is no the distinction between the simulation and the real implodes, it collapses between the distinction between the simulation and the real collapses. The real and imaginary collapse into each other. Simulation is even better than the real now. The example of it is the Disneyland. It's an experience of the real America, but it's not an escape, but it is imaginary and conceals the real. Actually, Disneyland is imaginary, a world, imaginary world, which conceals the reality. Real world is somewhere else. According to Baudrillard, the real America is somewhere else. But it's a imaginary world. Imaginary world is taken to be a hyper-real world, is a simulation. According to Baudrillard, the Watergate reporting was as an example of it. The reporting of Watergate was that it is a scandal. Watergate was a scandal. It concealed the American way of life in his view. In Baudrillard's views, that the reporting of Watergate scandal concealed the fact that it was the American way of life. In the business life, such things are there, that these scandals of a few capitalists are reported, but it is the way of their life, but the reality is concealed. This is Lyotard view that meta-narrative, God, Marxism, science, nature, etc. no longer serve as evidence. This view of Lyotard is supported by Baudrillard. The real collapses into the hyper-real. The real no longer is real. There is nostalgia, and the nostalgia assumes full meaning. Lawrence Grossberg is critical of Baudrillard. In his view, Baudrillard's views are ambivalent on socio-cultural changes. He is critical of his resigned celebration of the cultural exhaustion, of his nihilism without empowerment. He is critical of his putting not any possibility of the real struggles. So this is hyper realism of postmodernism is a culture of hyperrealism, according to Jean Baudrillard. And then we come to the third critic, that is Frederick Jameson. He was he's an American Marxist cultural critic. The points raised by him are that postmodernism is a cultural dominant of the late monopoly, that is the multinational capitalism, late multinational capitalism, not of monopoly capitalism, but multinational capitalism, a cultural dominant of the late multinational capitalism. Ernest Model has divided capitalism into three stages. One is that of market capitalism, then there is a stage of monopoly capitalism, then the third stage is that of late or multinational capitalism. Jameson's cultural Jameson divides culture into that in the realm of realism, modernism, and postmodernism. He accordingly divides them into three stages. The market stage of capitalism is considered by Jameson as realism, and monopoly capitalism as modernism, and the late or more multinational capitalism as postmodernism. He borrows his views from that of Raymond Williams. Raymond Williams' argument was that there is a cultural, historical development of culture, dominant and emerging, and residual cultures are there, according to Raymond Williams, but they out of these three, the dominant is the main one. Raymond Williams thinks historical changes bring changes in cultural modes. There is a shift from one stage to another stage. There is no complete collapse of any cultural mode. Earlier cultural modes remains there in the society in the form of residual cultures, and the new things emerge. They are the emergent cultures, and one is dominant. The main is the dominant. So Jameson bases his argument on this concept. The postmodernism is a culture. Postmodern culture is a culture of the dominant. Is the dominant culture of late or multinational capitalism. The second point raised by Jameson is that postmodernism is the culture of papacy. So papacy is a play of historical illusion, a blank parody, an empty copy, no sense of conventions is there, no sense of norm is there, a kind of nostalgia remains there. the films made in 1980s, 1990s are some nostalgia films. There is nostalgia about the past. The past is parodied. The empty copy of the past is there, but sense of convention is there. No norm is held. Allusion to the past is there, but so there is nostalgia about the past. The films, nostalgia, some nostalgia films are Rumble Fish, Angel Heart, Blue Velvet. They are nostalgic about the America of 1950s, which was a period of stability and prosperity. They also reflect the counterculture impulses of the early rock and roll and youth gangs. Postmodernism reinvents the feel and shape of characteristic art objects of the older period. And this is not a real picture of the past, but that of the characteristic objects of the older period. Star Wars film is there. It is not a historical film, but it's a nostalgia film. Some other nostalgia films are The Raiders of the Lost Ark, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, The Mummy Returns, and the Lord of Rings, Lord of the Rings. These films are capture not a real past, but use myths and stereotypes about the past. They use false realism. History of aesthetic styles displaces real history. So, and the third point advocated by Frederick Jameson is that postmodernism is a culture of the quotations. Cultural production is born out of the previous cultural production. Flatness and depthlessness is there. Superficiality is there. It employs other images, other surfaces are used. There is interplay of intertextuality. Stylistic innovation is no longer there. It imitates the dead styles. So this is the third point. The fourth point is that postmodernism is a schizophrenia as a second stylistic feature. It's postmodernism schizophrenia as its second stylistic feature. Schizophrenia prevails there. It fails to relate to history. Things fail to relate to history. A kind of language disorder is there. There is a failure to relate between the signifiers. The time continuum is no longer there. Present, past, future, etc. This is not there anywhere. You begin your things. You begin in the middle. So the continuum is not there. They prefer the time is perpetually present there, with the occasional interfusion of the past. So the things take place in the present, but an allusion to occasional allusion to the past is there, or possibility of future occasionally is there. Experience of the present is vivid and material, so things are presented in present. Is schizophrenia with the occasional play of the past, or the possibility of the future, but mostly that are the present things are there. The world with heightened intensity is before the schizophrenic person. A kind of hallucination is there. It has hallucinatory energy prevails. Hallucinogenic intensification of the normal humdrum life is there. Of the familiar surroundings, it is a loss. A kind of loss is there, and a kind of unreality. So the postmodernism is a kind of schizophrenia as its second stylistic feature. The earlier stylistic feature was that it's a culture of quotations. Next number is that it is hopelessly commercial. According to the Mason, the postmodernism culture is hopelessly commercial culture. Modernism touted commodity culture of taunted commercial culture of capitalism. Postmodernism replicates and reproduces, reinforces the logic of the consumer capitalism. It advocates the consumer capitalism. So, because it is it's a product of the later stage of capitalism, and consumerism is the culture, is a commercial culture, a hopelessly commercial culture. Aesthetic production is integrated into the commodity production in this period, in the postmodern period. Culture as culture and economic activity coincide. They go mix into each other. Culture and economic activity in society. Culture now itself is an economic activity. Collapse of distinction between culture and economic activities. There, postmodernism is not only a cultural dominant of the late multinational capitalism, but it is a hopelessly commercial culture. So the next point is that it's trivial about its triviality, about the postmodernism's triviality. There is a collapse between the high and low culture. It is the cost of modern's critical space. It is achieved through an explosion. An expansion is there. Everything has become cultural, economic value and state power to practices, to the structure of psyche. Everything has become cultural. So it reveals its triviality. According to Mason, it is trivial. Because everything is cultural, everything has become cultural. Masses remain dupes without critics. The criticism is not there. Everything has become cultural. So, but Herbert Marcuse, who is a leading figure of the Frankfurt School, discusses about affirmative culture. He says that it is affirmative. Modern postmodernism modern culture is affirmative culture. It makes the things unbearable things as bearable, the unbearable pain of existence as bearable. The solution here is illusory, according to Marcus. Ernest Laclau and Chantal Mouffe think that individual subordinates his labor power, but he also gets incorporated into social relations. But the ideology of resistance doesn't end there. So cultural free time is there. It is according to Ernesto Laclau and Chantal Mouffe, individual subordinates himself by selling his labor power, and he incorporates into social relations. But the thing is that the resistance doesn't end, the ideology of resistance doesn't end. So these are the views of summation. I want to add some other things which I feel the modern capitalist world, the corporate world has brought in. Earlier, what happened was that the manual things were transformed into machines. The machines were transformed as of the labor. Were the capital, and now it's going towards the robotics. A new development is there, so lessening the labor. It is the replacement of labor of the individuals, producing more unemployment. And now another thing has come up with the computerization, with the artificial intelligence that replaces mental labor. Earlier it was machines replaced manual labor. Now this artificial intelligence replaces the mental labor, that of the intellectuals. Now, earlier we used to find meaning in the dictionaries. Now we no longer need dictionaries in our mobiles and in our computers. We can know it, we can Google it and know the meaning of a word. Now the translations are available on the on Google and other networks. The things can easily be translated, not only translated, but the editorials can also be produced and are being produced. We don't know, but they produce the things which are dominant, the dominant ideology. You see, lakhs, millions and millions of books are stored in the computers, and a lot of information is there, a lot of data are there. So everything is available in the on the computers. So this is replacing the mental layer of the man. So this is a postmodern world. A virtual world is being created. Virtual meetings takes place. So this the unreal things are replacing the real things. You don't hold real meetings. You don't hold real conversations. You hold on virtual meetings, conversations. You don't hold physical classes. You hold them on computers. Online things are there. So a virtual thing is replacing the real thing. This is the way of life, the post-modern way of life. Now, the other things are that the TVs or media discourses are far from the real, and not about the real, but about something of the real. Whatever they discuss becomes real. The discourses produce such things that they appear to be real, may not be the real things. In the Iraq war period, the discourse was created that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. So Iraq was attacked by NATO countries and destroyed. Saddam Hussein was hanged, and so the real thing was hidden, and that was the oil of Iraq. So real war was waged for the oil of Iraq, and it was the discourse was created that Iraq possesses means of mass destruction, but later on it was revealed that it was false. So knowledge is created in the discourses may be misleading. And now another feature is as well coming up, is that the which is deluding the people. This is that there is a nexus between the corporates and the governing bodies and the politicians, those who govern, those who are in the government. They hide the reality. They say that they work for everybody, they take the support of everybody, but they say that they work for every person, everybody, but the reality is otherwise. In the world, the whole thing is hidden. The reality is not presented. What is presented is the unreality. This is evident that in the world, in today's world, 2,750 billionaires own 50% of world's wealth, and 50% of the population of the world owns only 2% of the wealth. So this is the reality is otherwise, and it is hidden. It is not that the politicians work for all, but only for few, for the interests of the few, that is those of the corporates, billionaires, and they live in they create a world of make-believe, a make-believe illusionary world is sought to be created by them to dupe the people. The reality is hidden. So this is the culture of postmodernism. The world is changing. The reality is not presented. What is presented is the unreality. The people are divided from among themselves. The real issues of the people are obfuscated, and the divisions of caste, communities, etc., are presented and debated in every day on the TV and in our other discourses as well. So this is all about postmodernism, and this is a further development. I have extended the things. These are my views. I have discussed the views of these three critics, but I have as well added some more developments which I think are relevant. So here I end my discussion on post modernism. Thank you very much.